And here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment for the Sony Compact Prime 50mm f2.5 G-Series lens. Now this is part of a launch of a trio of compact primes specifically targeted at the A7C. And I love that Sony's done this. It's a return to the roots of less is more, and getting compact cameras that do not cut corners and now glass to match it. Now, the first thing I'll tell you out of the gate at roughly $600 US, this is a fantastic little lens. It has basically everything you could want to match your A7C. You have a switch to control focus, a customizable button. You can hold focus. You can use it basically to switch into APS-C crop mode. I've said this in other videos. And of course, your aperture ring, as well as your focus ring, and then something I really appreciate that you don't see on everything, including the Sigmas I've been actively covering as well, which are also great compact prime options for the A7C, a click button, click switch, I should say, so that if you're a hybrid shooter like me, you shoot still and video, you're going to want that click switch because that's going to permit more flexibility, because you will be able to change your aperture without any audible noise. So something to be aware of. Really like that. I think it's just one of those things that you're going to wish you had if you're shooting video. Now, the lens hood that comes included reminds me of Sony's original 35mm that they launched when they went full frame for the first time with the A7. And that's not a bad thing. It's an interesting hood. Do I think it affords the best protection? Not necessarily, but it is still good. You do have weather sealing across this lens for those of you that are wondering, but I don't recommend getting it wet. I never have, never will. You know what you do when you shoot. If you're a pro, I keep saying that over and over again, you know how to mitigate weather conditions. And if you're just a basic beginner, hobbyist, enthusiast, know now that no matter what a manufacturer says when it comes to weatherproofing or even giving IP ratings like our phones, you still really shouldn't get them wet. It's really just a security measure, but at the end of the day, it's going to cause corrosion no matter what. The fit and finish on this is great. The lens is made in China. I'd have no complaints about that. The lens cap itself, traditional compact lens cap that Sony has been using on other lenses for many years, similar to the one that's on the kit lens that you can get with the A7C. And I guess that begins to become the question. Should you just go with the kit lens as opposed to these primes? And I think these primes are the better way to go. These primes being, if you haven't seen, the 24, this 50, and then there's a 40 as well. Now the 50 and the 40 overlap a little bit. I personally prefer the 50 over the 40. A lot of people believe the 40 is the sweet spot, each to their own. But my real question in reviewing this, because optically the lens is good, I don't see any issues with it. For portrait photography, this is the most ideal of the group. Obviously, if you customize the button on the side to throw your system into APS-C crop mode, it's going to give you an even better overall portrait capability at the loss, of course, of some resolution, some megapixels. I think the 50 is the portrait lens of this compact prime crop, the trio that Sony has launched. But I'm going to make the argument for going old school here and going back to the roots. Sony's going back to their roots with giving us a tiny camera with, performance traditionally reserved for large, heavy cameras that Canon and Nikon have, for years dominated the market with. And now, when Sony did kind of turn the industry on its head back in roughly 2012, around there, that's when it all really began. The NEX7, granted APS-C, they also launched the RX1, which was just a masterful piece of engineering. I still have an RX1, love that thing to death. I do hope Sony brings back something to match it, but with something like this, I am not so sure they need to. But the reason I'm talking about old stuff from Sony is that something that's old is still incredibly relevant. So let's bring that into focus. You may recognize this old beauty. It's the original back when Sony was still using the Zeiss name, so often referred to as a Sony, a Zeiss Sony. This is the 55 f1.8. Now, I personally think, even though this lens doesn't have all of the physical attributes of the 50mm, the new one, and it's more expensive. You're looking at a $900 lens, but you can find used copies for less, and it goes on sale often because it's old. But the fact that it's held its value all these years tells you something about this lens. Furthermore, this lens is known from the very inception, when it was launched years ago, to be one of the sharpest pieces of glass on the market. And today, it's still no different. Now, can it resolve 60 plus megapixels? No, that's not going to happen. You can still use it and you can still get amazing results. I do. I love it. There's a reason I never gave up on this piece of glass. So the reason I've introduced it is because, of course, while it doesn't have the click switch, while it doesn't have even a focus switch to switch between auto and manual, and while it does not have, of course, a customizable button, it is really close in size to this new compact 50mm prime. And being that this is 600 and this is 900, but really on sale, I feel like you can find this in the sevens. That doesn't put them so far apart. And if you buy it, secondhand in fairly good condition, the pricing gets really close. I prefer the older Sony 55mm. It's a faster piece of glass, a sharper piece of glass, and I do feel overall construction is higher quality. Furthermore, it is, for the most part, if you find a copy that isn't brand spanking new, made in Japan. I'm looking to see here. I'm going to take my glasses off. I don't need reading glasses, but I thought that my copy was made in Japan, but I'm actually not seeing a made in. But back in the day, these were all made in Japan. Now, that's not a knock against what country it comes out of, because no matter whether it's made in China, or I remember the Vietnam days, or Japan, they all have to be up to, after all that Sony's manufacturing, up to Sony's standards. So don't think that, I'm saying because it's made in Japan, it's better. That's not how things work. But if I can get something made in Japan here in 2021, I'm a happy camper. It's a nice, refreshing thing, especially being that Sony is a Japanese company, of course. So either way, I bring this into frame to let all of you know, don't forget about this old 55mm f1.8. It's still one of the best lenses for its price in Sony's full frame lineup. And while I absolutely adore the fact that this 50mm is so compact, it's cute, and it has more functionality in terms of the customizable buttons and the click switch, there is still something to be said for the fact that this is optically a better piece of glass. Now, 55 is a little awkward. I wish this was a 50, but again, they're so close in range that I wouldn't be doing justice if I didn't bring it up. And I'll mount this just so you can see the difference on body. And of course, it's heavier, but I don't feel it's heavy enough that anyone who's really considering the new Prime shouldn't be looking at this oldie but goodie, as I have trouble getting it on. There it is. I still think it's incredibly well balanced, and I think there's still something to be said for the old Sony look, even though it's been done away with, and all of the G series lenses now pretty much follow the 24 to 105 design language, which I think is really sharp looking. I still think that this lens is a winner, in my opinion. So, if your budget allows you, I recommend stepping up to this older, yet still incredibly competent piece of glass. Also, the beauty of this piece of glass is that it will happily perform up to snuff on cameras like the A7R II. The 3 and 4 is where things start to get a little fuzzy. I'm not saying it can't live and perform well there, but it's not ideal if you're really trying to get all of that resolution resolved. And that's part of the reason Sony has, of course, updated and put out newer glass over the years. But between these two, I would pick this every single day if still photography is your primary. If you're a hybrid shooter, this has that benefit of the aperture ring being silent, or of course in still mode making the click noise. You have none of that going on here, but it's still something to be aware of. I just want to put that out there. A lot of people, I think, have forgotten this thing ever existed. that being the 55. I, on the other hand, think that it's still incredibly competent and ideal for the A7C. So while I really like this lens hood's a little funky, not in love with the aesthetic of that, and it does have more competent weather sealing and overall flexibility with all the customization. I personally prefer the good old f1.8 55. So just food for thought. I still don't think you can go wrong with this at $600, but if they're the same price, I'm buying the old Sony every single time. But that rounds it out. A7C is a great camera. Glass for it is just getting better day by day. And what's not to like about a 6-ounce lens that is competent both in still and video capability? I just wanted to put it out there that you still have other options if you're willing to take on a little bit more weight for this already incredibly lightweight body. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.